Newcastle United are super rich, but despite that, they finished 7th last season and missed out on European football. The Saudi king isn't happy with that and has disposed of Eddie Howe. Instead, he has personally appointed me as the new Newcastle manager and has challenged me to bring the Champions League trophy back to Jeddah. I mean Newcastle. I'm using an updated database with all the real-life transfers. However, Newcastle's profit and sustainability issues mean we only have 4 million left over to spend. But that's okay, because we have 15 first-team players aged 30 and over, and Newcastle's owner wants us to focus on youth development, which means we can't sign players older than 23. As a result, for just 2.6 million, we signed Naipan from Rosenborg to be the first player to build for the future. The squad were happy to meet me, and when I told them this season I think we can qualify for the Europa League, they actually reacted really well, and morale was sky high heading into the new season. We kicked off the rebuild at home against Brentford, where anything less than a win is a disaster. Initially, we're setting up in a 4-3-3, where we're going to focus on getting the ball out wide to deliver crosses to Isak. Sandro Tonali will soon be back from his lengthy ban, so hopefully we can bet on him putting in some top quality performances. But it was young Lewis Miley who I decided to start in midfield, and he created the first goal as he found Anthony Gordon in space, who put it on a plate for Almiron 15 minutes in. Miley could have had an assist for Gordon just before half time, but the shot was straight at Flecken. But in the second half, he found himself on the edge of the penalty area with so much time to turn, place his shot, and double our lead. And if Callum Wilson had been a little bit more accurate, Miley could have had an assist as well. But overall, it was a superb win, and we may have a future star on our hands in homegrown hero Lewis Miley. He also helped rescue a draw away at Southampton, but couldn't stop Liverpool from beating us 4-3 at home. We also lost 1-0 away to Nottingham Forest and 3-0 at home against Leicester City. Relegation-threatened teams seem to be our Achilles heel this season. But Almiron was actually turning out to be our top scorer in the season's early stages, as we recorded some mammoth wins. 5-1 against Bournemouth, 6-0 against Wolves, and 3-1 against European rivals Aston Villa, with Almiron scoring in all 3 games. However, our topsy-turvy form means we're only 8th in the Premier League 10 games into the season, and we only went backwards from here as we just kept losing games against teams that we should be competing with for European spots. This meant as we head towards Christmas and the halfway point of the season, we could kiss goodbye to any hope of the top 4 as we sit in 9th place, 11 points off Liverpool in 4th. But obviously our target was the Europa League this season, and a 7-point gap to Chelsea isn't impossible to break down. But with no transfer budget to bring in new players in January, this is going to be a very difficult challenge. Unlike other rebuilds though, January was actually pretty kind to us, and we got back to winning ways with Alexander Isak finally overtaking Almiron to be the club's top scorer. But Almiron wasn't far behind, and was having his best goal-scoring season ever in the Premier League. And of course, Lewis Miley was still thriving, especially now we'd promoted his mate, Lewis Hall, to be our starting left-back. With 8 games to go, we're back in 8th place, but we need to be perfect to bridge a 6-point gap to Brighton in 6th place. A series of defeats ended any hope we had of European football, and put a real dark mark on the end of the season. We finished down in 9th place, way off the pace. But thanks to a combination of English teams winning in Europe, it's actually good enough for a Conference League spot. Next season, we need to build around Isak, Almiron and Miley, who are our standout players. And it's likely they will be surrounded by a lot of new faces. We have 12 players with expiring contracts, but I've only offered renewals to Almiron, Nick Pope and Kieran Trippier. Thankfully, we have been given a huge budget to replace these players with. However, as the board are insisting on only signing players 23 and under, they're going to be quite expensive. So actually, bringing lots of them in isn't going to be feasible. So we started small by bringing in some budget picks to add important depth to the team at left back, centre back and defensive midfield. And then I decided to splash the cash. Matthias Saule signs for £26.5 million from Roma to provide competition to Almiron on the right-hand side. We picked up Ousmane Diomande for £42 million from Sporting to start at centre-back, and then we blew £60 million on Eliwai to push Alexander Isak hard for a starting spot. We now have 5 players aged 23 and younger in the starting lineup, but that could easily increase with injuries and poor form. However, we just couldn't find our rhythm at the start of the season, as we lost 2-1 away at Manchester United, drew 0-0 with Arsenal and Leicester, and despite taking the lead against Liverpool, they pegged us back with a late equaliser from Harvey Elliott. It just feels like all the other teams are spying on us to know exactly what we're doing, in a very similar way to how you and I are all being spied on by big corporations who are trying to make huge amounts of money off our personal data. So I'm fighting back with the help of today's sponsor, Incogni. There is a multi-billion pound industry that revolves around companies collecting our personal data, putting it on a big list and then selling that list to the highest bidder. Luckily, we can remove ourselves from these lists, but as you would expect, these companies that are trying to make a lot of money off us make it as difficult as possible. But this is where Incogni comes in. I've been using their service for a couple of months now, and it has revealed to me just how crazy this world is. First of all, you sign up for Incogni and give them permission to go through the process of requesting that your data is removed from all of these lists. So for me personally, they've tracked down 216 companies that hold my personal data, and so far they've got me removed from 84 different lists. That is a staggering amount of companies that I don't want having my personal data. A lot of them will push back and deny your requests, but this is where Incogni is like a really good box-to-box midfielder and football manager. They just keep going and keep going and keep going until they get a result. So I feel like I'm starting to get some of my privacy back, which is great because there are some really dodgy people out there. People search websites are getting more and more popular, and they're basically websites where you can just search someone up and get all their details, which is horrible to think about. And if you ever get spam text or emails, I know I do all the time, it's likely because the companies sending out this spam have bought your data from one of these big lists. So luckily Incogni exists, and actually I'm genuinely quite thankful for their service. It's been so nice to have. There's a link in the top line of the description, incogni.com/TomFM. When you click the link, it helps support the channel, and you get 60% off an annual plan to take back control of your data and your privacy. This season, we're also in the Conference League, and although our ultimate aim is to win the Champions League, the board wants a European trophy this season. The new boys shined in the Conference League. Matthias Saule scored a brace against Austrian side Lask. Eliwai then banked himself a hat-trick as we travelled to Slovenia and beat Maribor 4-0. And both lads scored past Montenegrin side Sutjeska as we thrashed them 8-0 at St James's Park. In fact, we won all 6 of our league phase games, conceding just 2 goals in the process as we topped the table with maximum points. But we still lack consistency in the Premier League, as we keep losing to teams that we should be beating. But we have more points and we're higher up in the table than this time last season, so we are slowly but surely making improvements. Despite Eliwai's goals in the league phase, Alexander Isak was still our starting striker, and it showed when he scored 6 goals in our 11-1 aggregate win over Sheriff in the round of 16. He then scored twice as we beat Antwerp 5-2 on aggregate in the quarter-finals to see us progress further. But our goals in the semi-finals came from some unlikely sources. Lloyd Kelly's 20th minute strike earned us a 1-1 draw against Braga in the first leg, and it was Kieran Trippier's brace in the second leg that helped us win 2-1 on the night and 3-2 on aggregate to reach the Conference League final, where we're taking on Daniele De Rossi's Roma for the trophy. At the same time, results had been good in the Premier League, and with 4 games to go, we are agonisingly close to a top 4 finish. But despite our efforts across those 4 games, the teams above us just weren't slipping up. So we missed out on the top 4, but 5th place could turn into a Champions League spot if England finish in the top 2 spots in UEFA's coefficient rankings for the season. And if we can beat Roma in the Conference League final, we'll collect a bunch of coefficient points for England. But with Tonali, Botman and Livramento all injured, the challenge might be impossible. 20 minutes in though, Lewis Miley won the ball in the midfield and found Isak, who played it out wide towards Trippier. who sent the ball back into the path of Isak, who gave us the all-important lead. This gave us the confidence to go at Roma. Saulé came agonisingly close to making it 2-0. So as we head into the break, we've had the edge on Roma and deserve our lead. But 90 seconds into the second half, Roma got themselves back in the game as Pellegrini's run broke our defence and his cross found the head of Cristante. All of a sudden, it was Roma who were in the ascendancy, with Dovbyk getting in between two defenders and giving Roma the lead. And things got even worse for us when Roma played the ball down their right-hand side and found a low cross into Pellegrini, who made it 3. Despite multiple changes, we just couldn't get ourselves back in the game. We lose the Conference League final to Roma and fail the board's objective for the season. But there are a lot of positives. Isak and Saulé both scored 20 plus goals, and Wai scored 18, mostly coming off the bench. And of course, Lewis Miley had another phenomenal season with 24 goal contributions. But best of all, the English teams collectively did well enough in Europe to come second in UEFA's coefficient rankings, meaning that 5th place is good enough for a Champions League spot next season. And I think we can compete, because the Saudis have given us 200 million to spend this summer. But seeing as we released both goalkeepers and then sold some fringe players, which does give us almost 300 million pounds to spend, we need to recruit big this summer. So let's go through it all very quickly. Rome Jadon Owusu-Oduro is likely to be our new first choice keeper. But if he doesn't perform well, we've also signed Jonas Erbig to provide competition and push Owusu to be the best he can be. Callum Doyle signs to be a backup centre-back, whilst Elias Yelert will play second fiddle to Tino Livramento at right-back. Jack Hinshelwood from Brighton is our marquee signing of summer, and he'll compete with Tonali and Bruno Guimaraes for a starting spot. Leonardo Mendocino, on the other hand, is one for the future and is out on loan at Swansea this season. Then we're rejigging our attack. So Mamadou Sonko and Christian Volpato come in to be backup inside forwards, while Simone Pafunde will compete with Lewis Miley for a starting spot in the attacking midfield. 9 new players for a combined total of 180 million, and some of them look like real bargains on paper. Only Owusu in goal is going to get a start on the opening day of the season though. The rest of the players need to earn their spot in our new look formation that aims to be a bit more defensively solid, but be more free-flowing in attack, allowing anyone to score. But on the eve of the season, we have an issue. Isak has 1 year left on his contract and doesn't want to re-sign, mostly because Real Madrid keep making low-ball bids. But when I negotiated the price up to a total package worth 90 million, they were more than happy to accept. Now, we do have Wai to replace Alexander Isak, but after that, we don't really have a lot of depth up top. Luckily, we have a lot of money to bring in someone else. So for £83 million, we welcome Matthias Tell to the club from Bayern Munich to challenge Wai up front and Anthony Gordon on the left wing. But the scouts also found this Greek regen with 16 finishing and 15 composure. So we paid Pauk 9.25 million to secure his services, and we've sent him on loan to Hull for the season. Our season didn't start well though. Defensively, we were all over the place in a 4-0 defeat to West Ham, and we just couldn't find a way to score goals, even from the penalty spot as we lost 1-0 to Man United. But when we did figure out how to score, like when we put 4 goals past Spurs also scored 4 goals as our defence suffered and we draw 4-4. After 11 games, we're all the way down in 13th, but I'm not gonna panic, we just need time to gel. Which is exactly what happened, as Wai found his rhythm as our starting striker and we started to win more and more games. Of course, Matthias Tell was also getting in on the action, but he seemed to be more of a role player off the bench and made his impact that way. So by the halfway mark of the season, we had turned things around dramatically and find ourselves 5th in the table. At the same time, we'd been playing in the Champions League, and despite a tough draw, we've been doing pretty well. New signing Simone Pafundi was making the Champions League his own, scoring past Benfica, helping us to a 3-0 win over Villarreal, and scoring a wonderful goal in a 6-2 win over PSV Eindhoven. But on top of that, he was also joint 4th for assists, which is absolutely incredible. There is one downside to how good he's playing though, and that is there's not a spot in the team for Lewis Miley, which is quite annoying for me because in these first 2 seasons, Lewis Miley did become my favourite player. I know you shouldn't have favourites, but he was playing really well. Pafundi has helped us to 4th in the league phase table though, which sends us straight through to the round of 16. But we won't be going to the quarterfinals. This one is, it's a bit embarrassing actually. Somehow we lost 8-1 away at Liverpool in the first leg of the round of 16. And the only logical explanation is that Tonali had a massive bet on. Has to be it, right? Instead, we can put all of our focus into securing a top 4 finish in the Premier League, where despite wins over Manchester City, Liverpool and Manchester United, we still can't quite stop losing games to the likes of Leeds United, which holds us back from climbing the table. So with 9 games to go, we slide back down to 6th, but a top 4 finish is certainly on the cards. However, a series of draws in games we really should have won means our dreams of top 4 were slowly slipping away, and in the end, we finish in 6th place. But we do have 2 more points than the previous season, so although we finish 1 place lower, we are slowly seeing some steady improvement. And we've also made it to a cup final. We've had a pretty kind run through the FA Cup this season, and we now face Premier League winners Arsenal in the final. But Arsenal quickly showed us why they won the Premier League title by 18 points as Martinelli scored 13 minutes into the game. And Arsenal were looking to run away with things when Tonali brought down his man in the penalty area and Harry Kane scored his 28th goal of the season. That's a transfer I was not expecting to see. We were limited to shots from distance as we head into the break 2-0 down. Some sloppy defensive passing early in the second half almost let Arsenal score a 3rd goal, with the post coming to our rescue. But we just couldn't properly get rid of the ball and clear the danger, allowing Arsenal back at us moments later, and this time Odegaard scored. And then just over an hour into the game, he grabbed the Gunners 4th, and then make that 5, as Declan Rice decides to get in on the action as well. It was an embarrassing defeat and something I don't want us to replicate. Despite that, it had been a great season and we had breakout stars like Eliwai, who after subscribing to the channel, just like you all should do right now, scored a whopping 32 goals, whereas Simone Pafundi collected 41 goal contributions. Once again, the board is giving us £200 million to spend. We increased that by selling a few fringe players, as well as getting a lot of youth players out on loan to develop for the future. For a bargain price of £6.25 million, we signed Ashley Phillips from Tottenham as a backup centre-back. Then we invested £23.5 million in new left-back Lucas Jetton from Ajax. And then it turns out Barcelona aren't very good at keeping their players happy, because we've just signed Lamine Yamal, who is demanding to leave the club, for just £79 million to start for us on the right wing. Barca even had the audacity to ask for him back on loan. So let's see what impact he has on the team this upcoming season. The board are challenging us to finish in the top 4 and win the Europa League, where we've been given some really tough fixtures in the league phase. Yamal was a revelation on the right wing, as he took to the Premier League like a duck to water. He fit into our tactic perfectly and felt like the missing jigsaw piece as he scored a brace against Arsenal in a 5-0 win to get revenge for last season's FA Cup. But it was Matthias Tell who made the biggest leap. He got the nod ahead of Wai on the opening day of the season and scored a hat-trick past Nottingham Forest as we cruised to a 7-1 victory. From there, he never let his grip on the starting position go, as he led the way for goals scored at Newcastle this season. At the halfway mark, we're in 2nd place, 5 points behind Man City, who have a game in hand on us. In the Europa League, we conquered Italy by beating Roma 3-0 and Fiorentina 4-0. Norway did resist our invasion though, as we could only draw with Bodo Glimt. In fact, that draw was our only slip up in the league phase, as we battered everyone else to top the league phase table and go straight through to the round of 16. However, it did mean in the Premier League we lost to West Ham, suffered a 1-0 defeat to title rivals Man City, where obviously Erling Haaland scored, and even drew with newly promoted Ipswich Town. As a result, by the time the Europa League knockouts came around, we'd slipped down to 4th place as Man City looked certain to win the league title. We'd been drawn against Standard Liège in the round of 16, and thanks to goals from 6 different players, we won 8-1 on aggregate to progress. This put us up against Ajax in the quarter-finals, and they took the lead early on. But thankfully we equalised through Lewis Miley in the second half to draw the first leg. At St James's Park, we scored twice in the first 10 minutes to take control of the game. But it was a nervy end to the match as Ajax did pull one back. But thankfully we win 3-2 on aggregate. By comparison, the semi-finals were a breeze as we put 4 goals past Valencia in the first half of the first leg. Valencia did score twice in Spain, but we scored 3 times to win 7-2 on aggregate and reach another final. It would be nice for us to actually win this one for a change though. We kept up the good form in the Premier League as well, and we thrashed a lot of teams by big scorelines, as after almost 4 seasons, I think the team has finally come together, and next season we should be able to launch a title bid. 3rd place and 80 points is by far our best finish yet, but we still need to bridge a 17-point gap and get Matthias Tell to double his goal-scoring tally to be in with a shot of winning the Premier League title next season. In the Europa League final, we're up against Porto, and I feel confident. We gave Porto a warning 3 minutes in when Diamande's header rocketed back off the crossbar. 10 minutes later, we gave them another one when we grazed the crossbar from another header. In fact, we had a few chances, but we just couldn't get the ball in the back of the net, and I was starting to pull my hair out when we somehow went into the halftime break at 0-0. But finally, 50 minutes into the game, thanks to a very heavy deflection, we took the lead and control of the game. But of course, the lead didn't last long, as Porto caught us out and equalised. But what happened next is very confusing. Livramento put the ball into the path of Anthony Gordon, who just about gets it over the line, but he's obviously offside. Well, apparently he wasn't, because the goal stands and it didn't even go to VAR. The only thing I can think of is the Porto defender touched the ball first, but I would still say Gordon is interfering with play from an offside position. LEY did add a 3rd goal with 10 minutes to go thanks to a defensive error, which helped us go on to win the Europa League and our first trophy of the rebuild. But I do feel pretty guilty about Gordon's goal. Either way, the board are happy that we've achieved both objectives this season. We also had 4 players score over 20 goals, which is absolutely insane. So I think we have to look at winning the Premier League title next season and making a deep run in the Champions League. However, the board have reduced our transfer budget. It's only £189 million this summer. Managing Newcastle is so fun. You just get so much money every single summer. Do a Newcastle save, you will enjoy it. This summer was quieter though. Following the departures of Yelert and Perone, we signed Jarell Harto for £83 million from Ajax to be our new starting centre-back. We also picked up youngster Alexandre Pansadas for £31.5 million from AC Milan, as he looks like one of the best 18-year-olds I've ever seen in Football Manager. We got off to a winning start as we beat Spurs 1-0 away from home. Then we beat both Liverpool and Aston Villa 4-1 at home, which is a real statement, as they've both finished second in the table in previous seasons. But a 6-0 thrashing of Arsenal was our biggest statement of intent, as Simone Pafunde scored himself a hat-trick. But last season's champions Man City were able to hold us to a 1-1 draw at the Etihad, which was actually a very good result for them, as 11 games into the season, they're only in 8th place, whilst we top the table for the first time during the rebuild. Brighton are the side in 2nd place, and we thought we'd done enough to beat them. But frustratingly, Mykhailo Mudryk scored in the 93rd minute to share the points. But some insane victories like a 6-0 win over Brentford and an 8-1 win against Watford, who had to play 80 minutes with 10 men, ensures we stay on top of the pile and extend our lead to 4 points. At the same time, we've been playing really tough games in the Champions League. A 2-2 draw with Bayer Leverkusen wasn't an ideal start, and losing 3-0 to Real Madrid was even worse for our chances of qualifying. Lamine Yamal scored past his former club to earn us a draw, but thankfully after that, we finally started winning games as we beat the likes of FC Copenhagen 4-0, and when we travelled to Greece, we beat Olympiacos 3-0. So we just about make the top 8 and go straight through to the round of 16. Before that happens though, we slipped up in the Premier League as we lost 2-0 away at Aston Villa because we had 2 players sent off, and a poor first half means that Brentford beat us 2-1 in West London. As a result, our lead at the top has been reduced to just 1 point as we head into the final quarter of the season. However, we didn't let those losses affect us as we stayed relentless in our pursuit of the title, winning game after game until it came down to one final critical match. With 3 games to go, we have a 7-point lead over Everton, and if we can beat Ipswich at Portman Road, the title will be ours. We had the dream start as 9 minutes in, Pafundi was brought down in the penalty area and the referee awarded us a penalty, allowing Matthias Tell to score his 30th goal of the season. 10 minutes later, we doubled our lead as Mamadou Sonko put a low cross into the path of Yamal, who finished from close range to give us a big lead at half-time. Ipswich had a couple of chances, but never looked like scoring. But we also struggled to fashion clear-cut chances and had to rely on shots from distance. But we'd done the job we had to do in the first half of the game. So when the referee blew for full time, we lifted the Premier League trophy above our heads to crown ourselves champions of England. But can we also be crowned champions of Europe? We've been drawn against Atletico Madrid in the round of 16, and we took the lead early on with Callum Doyle, but Julian Alvarez equalised not long later. Despite that though, we controlled the game in Madrid and scored twice more before half-time to cement our dominance. But a lapse in concentration late on means Atletico score a second goal and make it tight for the second leg. But a masterclass in the first half where we scored 4 goals means we comfortably make it through to the quarter-finals. Here we took on AC Milan, who were far easier to beat than Atletico. Eliwai scored himself a hat-trick as we won 5-0 at home to basically guarantee our spot in the semi-finals. Although AC did beat us 1-0 in Milan, so we aren't totally invincible, which we also found out in the semi-finals. We travelled to Madrid to take on Real, and they tore us apart limb from limb as Mbappe scored 4 goals in a 5-0 thrashing. We needed a miracle in the second leg, and despite scoring 4 goals, Madrid scored 2, meaning they beat us 7-4 on aggregate to knock us out of the Champions League. But we've made huge steps this season, and if we can avoid Real Madrid next season in the knockout stages, I think the Champions League could be ours. Sonko dropped his performance levels slightly this season, so he might be a prime candidate to be replaced. But that all depends on if we can find someone 23 and under who's better than him. If there is someone better than him, we have the money to buy them, as the board once again spoil us. But in the end, we didn't need to spend much at all. We signed 20-year-old Jose Jesus from Aston Villa for just £17 million. How Villa have let a player this good have a £17 million release fee clause, I will never know. But they did make us pay £66 million for left-back Hayden Whitlock, who will start at left-back for us this season and help us with the homegrown rules. We had an incredible start in new boy Jesus as he scored in an 8-1 thrashing of Derby County on his debut, and Whitlock also got himself an assist to start life at the club. But it wasn't just teams down the bottom end of the table that we were beating. We also defeated the likes of Chelsea, Man City and Man United as we carried on from where we left off last season. At the halfway point, we lead the league by 5 points, and finally Matthias Tell might be able to beat Erling Haaland to the top goal scorer award. This season our Champions League draw is a lot easier, but we still need to take on Real Madrid, and frustratingly, they still pummeled us 5-2. So I am praying we avoid them in the knockouts. But we won 6 of our other 7 games in the league phase, including an eye-watering 5-1 win over Everton, to see ourselves finish in 5th place and go straight through to the round of 16. In the meantime, we continued our relentless pursuit of back-to-back titles in the Premier League, and beat all of our closest rivals, including Everton, Manchester United and Arsenal. As a result, with 4 games to go, we have an 11-point lead over Everton, and if we can win away from home against Aston Villa, the title will be ours. Just 5 minutes into the game, we were gifted the lead of the match, as Barella decided to play a through ball to Matthias Tell, who didn't need a second invitation to score. And 22 minutes into the game, another defensive mishap allowed Jose Jesus to waltz his way into the penalty area and chip the keeper to double the lead against his former club. Arguably, we should have scored more goals as the half went on, but we head into the break with a deserved lead. But any worries of a Villa comeback were brushed aside as Jesus scored his second goal of the game 52 minutes in. And with 7 minutes left on the clock, Greek wonderkid Zisis Lagondis made it 4 from the bench. We couldn't quite keep a clean sheet, but it didn't really matter. Once again, we lift the Premier League trophy above our heads. We're way better than we were last season, but can we make that count in the Champions League? In a repeat of last season's round of 16, we're up against Atletico Madrid, but this time we could only draw the first leg 1-1, and the second leg in Newcastle also ended up in a 1-1 draw, which means we're going to have to go to penalties, and it wasn't looking good when Eliwai missed our first penalty and Atletico scored theirs. Thankfully, Saule scored our second penalty, and Catania missed for Atleti, which gets us back on level terms. What followed was an intense shootout where no one seemed to be missing. Every player kept their composure and scored. Until it came to Atletico Madrid player Manuel, who stepped up and had his effort saved, meaning we win the shootout 4-3 and progress to the quarterfinals, which by comparison was a walk in the park, as Lamine Yamal and Matthias Tell give us a 2-goal lead early on, but Bayern Munich did equalise around 30 minutes into the match. Thankfully, Matthias Tell re-established our 2-goal leads. But Bayern wouldn't give up, and scored their second goal 55 minutes in. Once again though, we gave ourselves a 2-goal cushion thanks to Eliwai to win the first leg 4-2. In Newcastle, Bayern scored first, 6 minutes into the match. But less than 2 minutes later, we responded with a goal of our own, and we killed the game off in the 73rd minute when Mamadou Sonko made it 2-1 on the night and 6-3 on aggregate, sending us to the semi-finals where we lost last season. And could it happen again? As 5 minutes into the first leg, Manchester United took the lead through Karim Adeyemi, and to make matters worse, they doubled it 51 minutes in, as Rashford earned United a 2-0 win in the first leg. I really don't want to lose in the semi-finals again, but we've got a huge mountain to climb here. However, just 14 minutes in, Lamine Yamal opened up the scoring, as United couldn't clear their lines. And 10 minutes later, Jarell Harto found Jose Jesus in the box, who made it 2-2 on aggregate, eventually taking the game to extra time. And in the 102nd minute, we found the breakthrough, as Lamine Yamal scored his second goal of the night and gave us the lead. But to put it beyond all doubt, our OG wonderkid Lewis Miley came off the bench and made it 4-0 to seal the win and send us to the Champions League final. But we'll have to play without our hero Lamine Yamal, as in the 106th minute of the game, he was judged to have fouled Nuno Tavares and collected a second yellow card, which means he's suspended for the final. If we can win it without him, it will be a miracle. Matthias Saule comes onto the pitch to replace him as we take on an incredibly strong PSG side, who you could argue are better overall than we are. Despite some intense pressure early on, the PSG defence stayed composed and defended their goal line brilliantly, only allowing us to have shots from distance that didn't hit the target. And when the space opened up for them, they hit us where it hurt, putting a ball into the left channel where Savio had time to pick his spot and score the game's opening goal. We tried to respond, but we were clearly missing Yamal as Saule got on the end of Whitlock's cross but couldn't direct it goalwards. So instead we tried from the other wing. A poor clearance gave Livramento time to pick out a cross, put the ball on the head of Jesus, who levelled the scores for us on the night. However, I felt our best chance of the first half came in the 42nd minute, when we raced forwards on the counter-attack thanks to Livramento's quick thinking. But despite the overloads, we just tried to pass the ball into the back of the net and ended up wasting the opportunity. But at the break, the stats suggest we've been the stronger side and we should be ahead. However, nothing was happening in the second half. So around 65 minutes into the game, I chose to bring on Wai, Gordon, Miley and Guimaraes, who had an instant impact on the game, helping us work the ball forwards, but somehow Jesus couldn't get his shot on target. As a result, the clock ticked down and we have to go to extra time. Ferran Torres forced Owusu into a top quality save to deny PSG the lead, and Schlotterbeck's header from a corner came agonisingly close to finding the back of the net. We may have had more shots and a higher XG, but PSG looked more likely to score. So I was pretty happy when nothing happened in the second period of extra time, which means the game is going to be settled by a penalty shootout. Wai steps up first, and he scored. But so did Ferran Torres. Jose Jesus looks confident, but his powerful effort was straight at the keeper, which means PSG take the lead as they score. Bruno Guimaraes sent Donnarumma the wrong way to keep us in the game, and then Warren Zaire-Emery stepped up and hit the crossbar, getting us back on level terms. Lewis Miley then slotted his penalty into the bottom corner to give us the lead and put pressure on Di Lorenzo, but he calmly put his spot kick away. Anthony Gordon scored our 5th penalty of the shootout, which means Schlotterbeck has to score to keep PSG in the game. Owusu makes the save and Newcastle United are the champions of Europe. We've completed the rebuild in the most dramatic style. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like and subscribe before going over to watch this video where I rebuild Ipswich until they win the Premier League title, which actually is a lot harder than you might think it is, especially as Ipswich are a newly promoted team to the Premier League.